All right, everyone. Welcome back to the GDFL podcast hosted by yours truly, the Commissioner, Andrew Korn. This week, making his third appearance on this show, I have Trevor. Say hello to the world, Trevor.
Hello, world.
Oh, that never gets old.
Oh boy, I'm glad to be back. What a week it's been in fantasy. You know, for the high score match I had in my other fantasy leagues, I was quite shocked at how low scoring the two matchups were in this league this past week.
Yeah, it definitely was. Both of them were pretty low scoring. And really, what was really fascinating was like going into Monday Night Football, like all four of these teams are projected for about 120. And yeah, I mean, as we saw, like both games ended kind of with that Monday Night Miracle. So yeah, going in order from what we have on here, we have Ryan over Chaz. Ryan had that late touchdown by Keenan Allen with like 6 minutes left, and that was enough to put Ryan over the top. And then with Levi over Stein, Levi had that Jacoby Myers miracle. I know both Mooney and Myers were at zero going into the fourth quarter, and then Myers had like four catches on the last two drives, and maybe even three on that last one to give Levi the win. We're gonna break down their starting lineups more in a second, but
Okay.
yeah, just overall thoughts on the two playoff matchups that we had.
I don't think 120 or 112 gets a win this week for either playoff matchup.
Yeah.
That's my thoughts. As mentioned, I think this was a pretty low scoring week. I mean, it was nice and competitive, right? Like, I mean, for neutral people like myself that just wanted everyone in this league to sweat in the playoffs. I like it when playoffs team have a good sweat. It was great for a neutral fan. In my other dynasty league, I ended up going into Monday night not even caring. Like I had already had the win wrapped up. Granted, I'm probably going to get destroyed this week, but I like it when teams break a sweat, right? You don't want to go in too confident to Monday night.
Yeah, so I was actually at the Pistons game Monday with both Chaz and Stun, and we were like joking around. It's like, yeah, it's a good thing we're at the game right now, and like this will keep us distracted from like what's going on in your matchups. And like I was pretty glued to what was. I mean, I wasn't having Sleeper open, but I had the Yahoo Sports app open, kind of going play by play at every timeout, seeing what was going, what was happening, who was scoring. I'm just kind of like letting them know, like, oh, hey, like you guys are scoring or they're not. And like really, like the entire time for Stun's matchup, neither Jacoby Myers or Mooney had done anything. And so it was just kind of a whatever. DJ Moore, like, yeah, DJ Moore had three carries in the first quarter, which like really threw Stun off. Or like, is that real? Like, did they like mislabel those as rushes? I don't know because I wasn't watching, but it's just something that's fascinating. And then just like before I dive into the lineups, one more thing I want to bring up is yeah, Beans' team was hot at the end of the season and just barely missed out in the playoffs. Beans would have been a problem for everyone in the playoffs this year.
Yeah,
So
I agree. I've seen this in fantasy, right? It's like it's not the team with the best record, it's the hottest team going into the playoffs often wins. There's been so many. I'm playing fantasy football for a good 12, 13 years now. It's normally the team that has the hot lineup at the end. Many times I've seen a team squeak into the playoffs and then win the whole thing.
yeah, I mean Logan in year one of our league is like the best example of that, where his team was like pretty distant sixth in points going into the playoffs, but then caught lightning in a bottle and had three very strong weeks to end the season.
Yeah, that's all you need.
Okay.
Survive in advance, baby.
Yep, survive in advance. It doesn't matter how you win. It really, once you get to the dance, may the best team win and where the chips fall where they lie.
Exactly.
So looking at both Chaz and Ryan's starting lineups, I was like I didn't, Sleeper didn't give us the exact efficiencies for this week, but both
Okay.
of them set pretty much a near perfect lineup. I think Ryan's only could have been like half a point higher if he would have started Kareem Hunt over Dunze. And then I want to say on Chaz's bench, Ray Davis was at like nine, and
Yeah,
Jalen was
but I
actually
mean,
good
you
there.
can't really fault him for not starting Ray Davis. I took a deep look at this matchup, and if I were both of these teams, I hold my head high. Like there's nothing I look back on and lose sleep over as far as matchup decisions or start sit decisions in this one. So I mean, for Chaz, it's unfortunate that he just doesn't have that RB depth. I mean, Jalen Warren and Garendo, if those are your best two RBs going into the playoffs. That's not great. That's not a position I'd want to be in. Granted, you really only do need to start one RB in this league, but it's not a situation I want to be in. Granted, I don't know his exact draft capital, but I would imagine Chaz will be one of the many people targeting an RB in this uh, year's draft.
Yeah, so Chaz currently has three mid to late seconds. He has his own second, he has Ryan's, and I believe he has my second round pick. So don't know exactly, like he'll have the 207 for sure. Don't know where the other ones will be. But yeah, I mean, looking at his lineup, he did have CMC and K9, and those were supposed to be the guys leading him. K9's been a surprise scratch, all of it post trade deadline, so it's not like he had much of a time to react to that.
Yeah.
And then so with CMC, just like yeah, he got injured. What was that, 2 weeks ago now, right before the trade deadline. So again, like didn't have much time to react. And that's really just like the way Chaz's season. He's had two different halves of his season. The first half, he was looking like the best team in the league. But then in the second half, just a few injuries caught up to him, and like the Godwin injury was another big one that hurt him. He was starting. This lineup's a bit of a shell of the lineup he was starting before the season, and so
Yeah, and I
yeah,
mean, I don't know. I feel like some of these players ran into tough matchups, like Pittman and Hill going into the week. I'm like, I don't really like those matchups for either team. I was expecting sub 10 points for any of them. I didn't like Warren going into Philly. I mean, granted, it it could have gone better for him if things played out a little differently, especially, if Pittman doesn't lose a fumble, if Hill's targets are a little bit more accurate, who knows? But at the end of the day, Ryan pulled out the W here.
yeah, man. It's Ryan's been having a bunch of scrappy wins all season. It feels like he's had a lot of matchups like this one where he just kind of squeaked by, and it usually requires like one random player. Like he's been starting like this group of players pretty much all season, and it'd be like, oh, just QJ just has a two touchdown game this week, and now it's 25 points, or Keenan Allen has a two touchdown game, or like
Yeah,
whoever it may be. Like Flowers has had that a few times, just kind of has like his quarterbacks providing that steady production, and then there's like one flex like, having a good enough game, and then like the rest of his team being kind of whatever. And it's been a winning formula for him. I mean, I don't think it's sustainable winning a bunch of close matches, but it's gotten him this far, and this was his first playoff win in the GDFL, which is something that I
yeah.
found kind of surprising. I mean, he was the two seed the last 2 years, didn't advance in the semis
Interesting.
either year. Um, but yeah, good for Ryan. Do you have any final thoughts on this matchup?
Um, Not really. I was surprised to see Laporta go off. That's probably the most targets Laporta's had all year, if I'm not mistaken. So that was a encouraging sign for Ryan. I imagine with Montgomery out, Laporta probably is a slight beneficiary for that for the rest of the year.
Yeah, it definitely could be. I think some of that was just like the game script too. The Lions passed the
Yeah.
ball at least 50 times. I mean, Goff had 500 passing yards. Like, I don't think Goff is going to have 50 pass attempts and 500 passing yards every game, every week.
Well, you never know with the defense they have.
You never know. I mean, the game's in Chicago this week. I haven't seen exactly what the forecast is going to be, but like one thing I will say about that Montgomery injury is Gibbs is looking like a league winner now. And
Yeah, I mean, I saw the stats when he's out, Gibbs has gone off. I mean, Gibbs is probably CMC 2021 right now.
20, wasn't he injured in 2021?
Was he? I want to say,
2019 was his really big year.
okay,
I think he was injured in both 20 and 21.
okay. I feel like he has even years are his bad years, so I want to say 2021 was decent, but we'll we'll we'll
Yeah.
let the sleeping dogs lie here. Look this up later.
Yeah. I mean, regardless, Gibbs has looked poised to have a monstrous final 2 weeks of the season.
Yeah.
Anyway, so going to talk about Stun's and Levi's matchup. So
Oh
Levi
God.
won by two. And I think the obvious one to talk about Stun's team is he did not start Cooper Rush against the Carolina Panthers. And when he came over on Sunday to watch the Lions Bills game, when he told me he didn't want to have to choose between which wide receiver he wanted to start, so he decided to start all of them.
Um, that was one of the dumbest decisions I've ever seen in the history of this league. I don't want to like. get it wrong. Like, what the actual fuck are you thinking, Ashton? Like, I've seen you make questionable decisions before in my life. I've roomed with you and seen you make questionable decisions then. This is some of the most questionable decision making I have ever seen you do in my entire life. Like Cooper Rush, high floor. You know Levi's team probably isn't going to go off given that lineup. You start the right players, you're winning this matchup. And you decide to start a guy that gets 0 points.
Two guys got 0 points.
Simply. Two guys that got 0. I mean, Waddle, I probably would have started Waddle too, but it's super flex for a reason. You had two QBs sitting on the bench. You could have started fucking, what was it, Spencer Rattler? You could have started Rattler or,
Hayner actually got the start over Rattler this week for the Saints,
okay.
but
So, but Cooper Rush, it's
yeah.
Carolina defense. Don't overthink it.
hmm No, I think that was a very classic case of overthinking it. I mean, like if I were setting Stunn's lineup, Mooney was like wide receiver 12 going into this matchup. I probably would have sat Ridley, given like the receivers he has, the way Waddle been improving lately. You can't sit Judy when Jameis has been playing. So I mean, it's even like sitting Ridley though for Cooper Rush still would have gotten him the win. Um, yeah, Stun said
Yeah,
it
I
best
mean,
in the group me. You're not gonna mismanage a season like how Stun did this year.
yeah, that is just brutal. Like, I don't know how you come back from that. Like, you gotta just. I mean, Stun can read a disc, but can you read a lineup? No.
Oh man, you are putting Stun in a body bag right now. I will give him credit. He did start Brenton Strange over Kyle Pitts, which was also a decision I was like, okay, Stun, that's pretty bold. But Strange had 12 targets and had 13 points. So that's something good
Yeah,
Stun did for the week. I remember like him think when he came over and said that, I was like, okay, so you're really relying on this Jaguars passing attack with Mac Jones right now, huh? And like that aspect of it worked, but yeah, not starting Cooper Rush. That's a tough look, Stun. No other way of putting it.
yeah. I mean, hopefully everyone else in this league learns a lesson from this. Start a QB if you have it, unless it's like Zach Wilson versus with three wide receivers out versus a top tier defense. Then don't start Zach Wilson, but anybody else start.
hmm And then looking at Levi's side of the ledger, I mean, T. Higgins had a pretty nice day. James Cook had a pretty nice day. So I really thought Jonathan Taylor fumbling the ball at the 1 yard line when he should have scored a touchdown and that being an 8 point swing. I really thought Levi was going to lose his matchup because of that.
That would have been hilarious. Jonathan Taylor in my other dynasty league, and I definitely thought, shit, I'm gonna lose now because of this. But fortunately, I didn't. I still don't get how players do it, especially Jonathan Taylor's been around forever. What the actual fuck are you doing, dude? Like that is insanely dumb. And wasn't there a guy from Cincinnati who did the same thing? Um, on the defensive side, I want to say this past week, or had a fumble that shouldn't have been a fumble. I'm not exactly sure on that one, but it's happened I mean, look at the guy who is it, Malachi Corley on my team
hmm
who dropped it for the Jets. It's baffling how many players do this still.
Yeah, no, the one that like really stands out is probably almost 10 years ago now, but I think it was a Utah Oregon game where
It
it was
was.
yeah, it was fumbled and then returned for a touchdown.
Yep, I
And I think
remember
that ended
reading
up
that.
being a one touchdown game too. It was just like yeah,
It's
like how did especially Jonathan Taylor has scored a lot of touchdowns since he's been at Wisconsin.
yeah, I would expect that out of JMO, not Jonathan Taylor.
hmm Yeah. Yeah, I mean, looking at Levi's lineup for this week again, like his quarterbacks both were mildly disappointing. Like you kind of were expecting a little bit more out of them. Really, yeah, James Cook kind of carried here for him, and then just kind of had steady enough performances. It was really interesting is both Saquon and Mixon both only had 8 points when both of them have been averaging about 20 this year. So.
Yeah,
I'm sure both of them were disappointed, but again, they kind of cancel each other out in terms of overall scoring, both of them having disappointing weeks. But yeah, like you said, very low scoring week for the first round of playoffs. And so, with those losses by both Chaz and Stun this week, we have an updated draft order with Sokol now having the seventh overall pick from Chaz,
Oh
and then
wow.
Stun having the eighth overall pick. So, yeah, Sokol currently has 2-7, and then wherever my pick lands, Ryan has three, and then two of 109 through 112. And then Trevor, you have wherever Levi lands.
I needed fucking Stun to win and Levi to lose. That would have helped me a lot.
hmm Yeah, because I would
It's
have given
annoying.
you the 107, but that's just the way fantasy falls sometimes.
Yep.
But yeah, just a reminder for everyone in the league, the loser of the third place matchup gets the ninth overall pick, the winner gets 10th, and then the loser of the championship gets 11th, and the winner gets 12th. And then there's a cash payout for first, second, and third. I want to say it's 250. It's either 100 or 120 for second, and then 60 for third. And then on a quick look at the matchups for next week in both the playoff bracket and the Stink King bracket is what it says up there, or Poop King maybe. I don't know what it says. But yeah, we have Mark versus Levi. Mark is currently favored to win 138 to 125, and then I'm against Ryan, and I'm favored to win about 135 to 112. So what are you looking for going into the semifinal matchups?
I'm looking at I do think the two buys end up winning. I think Ryan's slightly underprojected. I think Ryan really does have some boomer bust guys on his team. So I think because I looked at this matchup and Ryan's quarterbacks like Jaden Daniels and Joe Burrow can go off for a lot more than your two quarterbacks, in my opinion. So if Burrow and Daniels both have really good weeks, that keeps Plumstead in it. But if they don't, if they have average or bad weeks, I think you pull out the win.
So something I was actually doing before got on the show today was I was trying to figure out like what my like starting lineup's average points per game is versus what Ryan's would be. And I think my starting lineup is averaging one, like my starting lineup this week. So that doesn't include Montgomery because that would raise my average to like 2 or 3 points. But I think mine was 145 to Ryan's 115, I want to say.
Okay.
Yeah, his best flex player was Swift at 11.7, and then the worst one in my lineup was Devontae Smith at 11.8, which looking at like just purely at flexes, I have a much have the upper hand there.
Yeah,
But yeah.
that's why I kind of thought. I do think you ultimately pull out the win there, and then I think Mark pretty comfortably wins the matchup over Levi. I mean I don't expect an upset here. I think it's you and Mark in the finals. I really do.
And I mean, that's what I predicted before the season. That's what I predicted in the playoff preview. I mean, that's what Stun predicted last week. It seems to be like that's what the overwhelmingly consensus is going to be me versus Mark in the finals. You never know what's going to happen. Like, yeah,
I
and
was
you
in
are
this
the
position
you have
years ago.
firsthand experience of you never know what will happen in the playoffs after Jake
Yeah.
beats you by half a
Built
point.
a juggernaut for the first year. It went according to plan and then just fucking lost to Jake Pruitt.
Yep. Yeah, no, I think when I was like doing some of the league history stuff, like for one of the last newsletters, like your first season is still like the most dominant season that a team has had in terms of regular season success.
Yeah,
Like you had the most points scored by close to 100. Like it, but yeah, sometimes the best team doesn't always win, and that happens actually a lot in fantasy.
it does.
So
So
yeah,
we'll
and
see.
yeah, I Ryan definitely has the edge at quarterback in my matchup. I think I have the edge everywhere else. And then in Mark's matchup with Levi, it's a very Mark and I our teams are built very similarly right now, where neither of us really have a star quarterback, but like we're both built on like just having like deep starting lineups. Like I want to say everyone in my starting lineup outside Devontae Smith was averaging between like 13 and a half and 16 and a half points. And Mark's was pretty similar. Derrick Henry and Gibbs, I think, were slightly above that 16 and a half number. But like both Tua and Mahomes are both at about 16 and a half points per game right now. And
Yeah,
so it's definitely have very similar roster constructions. Ryan's is the two strong quarterbacks with whatever he has at receiver on his roster right now. And then Levi built up that running back army through all those trades. Um,
yeah. I will say if there's ever a week for Anthony Richardson to go off, it's probably against Tennessee with his coach's job on the line.
Yeah. Okay.
So
Yeah, we'll see. Levi might have a tough decision between Bo Nix. I mean, I think he's definitely starting Bo Nix, but between Drake May.
yeah, I saw he's starting Bo Nix and Richardson. I guess May is a heavy consideration. He is like just getting enough points that you're like, shit, should I start him or not? But he's not overwhelmingly like forcing his way into lineups currently.
Yeah, like the way I look at like the May versus Richardson is Drake May has the safer floor. Like I feel like Drake May has been around like 15 points a game, but not much like deviation from that for the last couple weeks. Where Richardson's been a lot more boom bust, like he might get you 5 to 9. He also could get 25 to 30, depending on what his rushing stats
Yeah,
look
I
like
mean,
against him that day.
he's facing Mark. I mean, he's facing a bad team. You got to play the high boomer bust guy here.
hmm Yeah, and then we have so there are more matchups than what are on the screen. We do have the fifth, sixth matchup between Stun and Chaz. And then in the losers bracket, we do have a matchup between Logan and Beans for seventh place. But yeah, looking at the ultimate losers bracket, we have Trevor versus Shrew and then Sokol versus Jake.
I haven't even looked at my lineup this week yet, to be honest. I'll end up looking at it tomorrow morning and starting some people, but we'll see. I mean, I just like seeing Shrew lose, so it'd be nice to see him lose. That's one
Mhm.
of my favorite feelings. So
Yeah. It's actually fascinating just like looking at the projections. Both Shrew and Jake's are higher than what Ryan's are right now.
that is pretty hilarious.
Um, but yeah, I think Ryan scored more points than both of them on the season though. And like he's like
Hey,
overshot his
I
projections
scored
all
more
season.
points than all I finished last and I scored more points than all four playoff teams that played last week.
You outscored everyone but Mark last week. You were second in the league in scoring.
That's pretty wild. I do think I've actually hit on some of my rookies this year, which has helped. So that really does help when the rookies you drafted start hitting at the end of the year.
hmm Yeah, so just before we go into our like final segment where we talk about our special topic, I just want to go over some of the like recent news that we had. So Jameis Winston, Will Levis, and Kirk Cousins have all been benched for DTR, Mason Rudolph, and Michael Penix, respectively. And then there's also I was like trying to like do some thinking about like how many quarterbacks have gotten benched this year, and we've seen up to 9 different quarterbacks get benched, and 10 if you want to include Tommy DeVito being benched for Drew Lock. But yeah, we've seen quite
Hmm.
the plethora of different quarterbacks being benched. I think it's going to create some interesting quarterback situations going into 2025 for a lot of these teams.
Yeah, not giving away our segment, but a good preview to possibly the next segment. The one that I think is going to be most interesting is Falcons have 3 weeks left, and if they win all three, they probably get a playoff spot. I don't know if 9-8 does it. If the Buccaneers have started to catch fire, they got a pretty easy um rest of the way, but we'll see. I mean, they got the Giants this Sunday. I think regardless if Cousins or Penix started, Atlanta's winning that one, but you want to see what you got for the final 2 weeks, right? I mean, you're trying to make the playoffs. Penix is probably the guy. I mean, we went to Michigan State. I just don't think Kirk Cousins is healthy. I think that Achilles injury is probably the end of his career, unfortunately,
Mhm.
in any meaningful manner. They are, correct me if I'm wrong, they can cut him after next season, correct? With minimal dead cap money.
So I
Um,
was looking into it. They owe him 65 million guaranteed still. So I think the
okay,
way that the cap works is they could do like all 65 next year, or they
okay,
could split it like 40 and 25 between 2025 and 2026.
okay.
Like they could cut him. It's a massive cap hit to cut him.
I don't think they'll cut him. I mean, it'd be one of the most expensive backups in league history. Or you work out a trade. I don't know. I don't.
Yeah, he has a no trade clause. Like I really think he's gonna force him to cut him. I don't think he wants to be the backup.
That'll be interesting.
Yeah, that's interesting. But yeah, we're talking about Penix. I know the Falcons have the Giants this week, and the next week they have the Commanders. The Commanders are facing the Eagles this week. So if the Falcons beat the Giants and then the Commanders lose to the Eagles, I think the Falcons Commanders game is actually a win and in for a playoff. Not like a true win and in, but if the Falcons beat the Commanders next week, the Falcons would have control of their destiny for the last playoff spot over the Commanders. So that's something to definitely keep an eye
Interesting.
out. Yeah. I was like, I noticed it got flexed to Sunday Night Football next week, and so I was like looking into what the scenarios are, and it's like, oh, they definitely could like steal that spot from the Commanders. Like that's definitely not too unrealistic.
Yeah. I think the only final comment on this is I think benchings was always going to be benched for Drake May. That was the consensus going in. So the other ones are slightly surprising, though, in my opinion. Maybe not as much Justin Fields for Russell Wilson, but Jacoby Brissett for Drake May was not surprising at all.
Yeah, I mean the Patriots were going to blow this year. They were going to move
Yeah.
him at some point. It's just a matter of when. And so this leads to our final segment, which is what players do you think aren't startable right now, but could be startable next year, but rookies are excluded. So that's what made it really tricky for me to
It
prepare
is.
for this.
I mean, like most of us found a rookie. Oh yeah, he's gonna break out next year. I really wanted to think on this topic, so that's what I came up with. So I don't know if you have your list pulled up, but do we want to go position by position here?
Yeah, we can. I'll put it up. I have it on my phone's notes. I just yeah.
Same.
Reason why rookies are excluded: JJ McCarthy and Michael Penix were the low-hanging fruit. But we
Yeah.
came up with this idea before Penix was even announced as the starter. So like
Yeah.
the idea was to like come up with like true like deep sleepers. And so
Uh,
you want to start with your list at quarterback?
Quarterback, yes. So my first quarterback is Justin Fields. I think he ends up with a starting role next year somewhere. I don't know where, but I think he is one of the top 32 quarterbacks in the league right now, still.
Okay.
I don't think he'll get a great starting job, but I think he is a great filler for a team that won't draft a quarterback this year or drafts a late round guy.
Yeah, like a team like the Jets could potentially be a fit, or maybe
Yep.
Tennessee, depending on like where these draft slots fall. Yeah, I mean, I just like had 2021 quarterbacks listed plainly. I had Zach Wilson, Trey Lance, Mac Jones, and Fields were all different names I'd written down just because they'll all be free agents. Like, who knows who gets a shot, like where they get a shot. Like some of them might have a chance to be a bridge quarterback for a team that drafts Milrow somewhere, maybe. You just never know what'll happen. But yeah, I
So
like the Justin Fields pick. So I was going to include Jordan Travis on the Jets, but then I realized he was a rookie.
he is a rookie. That was one I thought of too.
So the one that I'm going to mention that you didn't have was Taylor Heineke is like really the only like free agent quarterback I think could go somewhere and be a bridge. I don't think it'd be long term. I think it'd be like how Brissett started the first 5 weeks. But with Heineke being a free agent, I could see a team taking a chance on him. I saw he
Heineke's
was on your roster right now too, Trevor. I had him at one point in the dynasty, but
Yeah,
yeah, I
so
mean,
Heineke's one. So I actually do think Mac Jones could end up somewhere, but the one deep guy that I don't think has been brought up at all, end of a deal, hasn't really had a chance to show out, is Kyle Trask.
okay. Yeah, that's not a name I had on my list. I like the Kyle Trask pick though. Um, I thought,
I just think he gets got somewhere to compete for a starting job with a rookie and might end up winning it and starting the first 3, 4 weeks.
okay, yeah, that's not a name I had under my consideration. It's just funny because he was on my roster all of last season and most of this season. So no, I like the Kyle Trask pick though. Yeah, like you said, he hasn't had a shot. Like his realest shot was last year in training camp against Baker, and I really thought at the time, like if he doesn't beat out Baker here, especially with how bad Baker had looked the year before in Carolina and LA, that it was probably gonna be it for him. But no, I like that Trask pick. So the other like really like deep one I have, he's not on any roster right now, so perhaps someone goes and picks him up. Is Jared Stidham on the Broncos? He had like
Yep,
two.
that was another name I thought of too. I'm in agreement with that one.
Yeah, he had two decent starts at the end of 2023. That's really about it. And so like we're going deep here with like some of these names we're trying to pull. And like
I mean, I hate to say it, but if the Lions are in real need of someone that's not a quarterback, I could see Hendon Hooker getting traded.
yeah. I also wouldn't be shocked if I mean we haven't really seen Hendon Hooker in any game action. Like I wouldn't be shocked if the Lions brought in of that quarterback if they really don't believe in Hooker. It's really hard to say when you don't know what he
I
looks
mean,
like.
they were linked to Jones, Daniel
That's
Jones.
true. That's true. No, I think there's gonna be a ton of those like types too, where former failed start, like someone like Mac Jones, I think could be a good backup behind Goff. Like you just never know.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. I mean, there's also some really old guys that you might see. Oh God, is he still going to start like a Jimmy Garoppolo?
Hmm. Oh, for sure. Yeah, and that's what kind of made this list hard is like I could probably come up with a long list of like the quarterbacks who are between QB 30 and 50, but like none of them are.
QB was the easiest one. QB and tight
Oh,
end
for
were the
sure. QB
easiest
was definitely
positions.
the easiest one. So yeah, let's do running back. I had a hard time with running
Oh,
back
running backs, those were hard.
because
Mostly
it's like,
because I think there are current starters that are going to be out of the league next year due to how heavy this incoming running back
hmm
list is. Like I could easily see a guy like Ramondre Stevenson being out of the league in a couple years or a year due to the incoming running back class. I think Rico Dowdle could be out of the league and he's startable this year.
hmm
There are just some guys that are starting right now due to injuries or just unfortunate situations that I think are replaced next year.
Yeah, even like names like Tyrone Tracy or Chase Brown, like they're starters this year, but those teams didn't invest heavily in them. Like I
No.
wouldn't be shocked if either of those teams drafted another running back to either be a in complement with them or as a starter, like just outright. But the names,
So I did come up with two names.
yeah, let's hear 'em.
So I'll give my first name and then you give your first name. And I want to see if it's this name is on here. This is probably a more popular pick. Kendra Miller.
I had him listed at first, but I was like Kamara had signed an extension this year. I think he's gonna be under contract next year. So like I was like I had him. I took him off at the last second, but like that was one I had on mine.
So
But
I
he's
think he
gonna get
gets
a
a
run
shot
that,
next year.
yeah, what'd you say?
I think he gets a shot next year.
Yeah, I mean, I think he definitely is gonna get some run. I mean, both Mark Ingram and Kamara could feast in that Saints backfield before. I think he'll definitely get some run, especially if Kamara's age. No, I think that's a good one. So the first one, this one kind of feels like cheating because he's startable now, but I had Jerome Ford, just like looking at the Steelers depth chart.
That's a good one.
Because like looking at the Steelers depth or not Steelers, looking at the Browns depth chart, Chubb's gone. I don't see any way he comes back. He was not very good this year.
No, he was
Ford,
actually worse than Ford.
yeah, Ford is still under contract. I think the Browns probably bring in some competition. I don't think it's just gonna be him. I think he's still at least gonna have a pass catching role no matter what they do. So like Ford was the top one in my list, but it kind of felt like cheating because I think I started him like 4 or 5 times this year.
Yeah.
But
I
it's like
mean,
he's a
another one
backup.
that's like kind of cheating and a little bit off topic, but like I feel like Zach Charbonnet gets like what the hell do you do with him like once Ken Walker gets healthy? He has the talent. He's clearly better than a lot of like in my opinion, he's better and he passes the eye test better than some of these RBs in the league currently.
Mhm. Yeah, Charbonnet is another good one, but again, he was drafted to a shitty situation, so
Yeah.
there's only so much you can do. So the other, I only had three running backs on my list. My other two were Jalen Warren, which again kind of felt like cheating, but Najee's a free agent, and then I think Jalen Warren was an exclusive rights free agent, so like they could keep him if they wanted. And then yeah, Eli Mitchell is my other. He's gonna be a free agent, I think, in the
Yeah.
right like zone scheme. If assuming he can come back and be healthy, maybe not like a week one starter, but like he might be able to get some run with the team next year in a new place.
Yeah. My other guy, I don't know how likely this is. I think he has to get traded somewhere, even though he's under contract, so maybe not. But I think Keaton Mitchell gets a shot because holy shit, did he pass the eye test when he was healthy?
Hmm. Yeah, is he off IR? He's off
Yeah,
IR, right?
he's off IR.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I mean, he's on the Ravens. He's probably still under contract with the Ravens next year, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, no, that's definitely someone
So
who could be.
Yeah.
It's
So
an option.
I struggled to come up with names for this though. Like I guess another one is Gray from the New York Giants. I don't That was one that I kind of toyed with a little bit, but like all the rest of them, it's like, man, I think there's a lot of turnover in RBs next year.
Yeah, I mean, there's running backs don't have to be even good to be starters. You just have to be at the top of the depth chart, is kind of how I've always viewed the
Yeah,
running back position. And so, like, it's really
exactly.
hard for me to, like, oh, there's this really, like, hidden gem on a bench because, like, most of the time do get a shot at some point because running backs get injured all the time, except this year, apparently. But, okay, we're starting to run a little low on time, so let's speed it up a
Okay.
little bit. So, who do you have at receiver?
I have Iosivas from the Bengals.
That's my number one as well.
Okay. And then I looked at the Tennessee Titans, and they have a lot of wide receiver free agents. I am going Traylon Burks gets a shot next year with a new quarterback.
Okay. Yeah, Traylon Burks was not another one I had. I had Joseph Ash on the Bengals as my first. I had Parker Washington on the Jags as my two. I don't really know what Christian Kirk or Gabe Davis's contracts look like, but I think he might be able to carve out a role in Jacksonville. I put Mingo on the Cowboys. I don't really think Mingo's any good, but the Cowboys gave up significant draft capital to get him, and like Cooks is kind of old. I don't think Jalen Tolbert's anything special. So Mingo I have on that list, but don't really believe. And then the other one is Jake Bobo for the Seahawks. Maybe something happens with DK Metcalf. I think Lockett might be gone or retired. And so maybe Bobo takes a
Yeah.
bigger step. But again, I think most receivers, if they are good or have any semblance of talent, they usually would have found the field by now. It's like
Yeah.
maybe like someone like Jalen McMillan, but he's a rookie, couldn't include him. So that's what made it really tough is finding non-rookies. So what young second year receiver has shown promise but hasn't played enough? There's just really not much of a list there.
Yeah. And I was thinking like Traylon Burks has been hella injured. Like, what if he end I also almost put Tim Patrick on here too.
Hmm.
So
Yeah. Tim Patrick, yeah, again, like someone like DJ Chark, maybe.
yeah,
Like you never know like what random older vet who once had a good season breaks back out.
true.
And then all right, tight end. So who do you have at tight end?
I have Noah Gray. I think he's the starting tight end for Kansas City next year. And I think he ends up a top 10 fantasy tight end next year.
Okay. You heard it here first,
That's a
folks.
bold prediction.
Top 10. Yeah, I saw on
Hopefully not last.
yeah, I saw on Twitter today in a startup someone actually took Noah Gray over Travis Kelce. Like he was off the board first and what I saw on Twitter today. So, okay, yeah, oh, that's a good pick. I probably went way deeper at the position than you did. My first one was Jeremy Ruckert on the Jets because Tyler
Okay.
Tyler Conklin's an impending free agent, and Ruckert's like going to be in his third year in the league. He might be more of a blocking tight end. I honestly don't know anything about him. I had a really hard time with tight ends just because like there's really not that many relevant ones to begin with, and it's like picking a backup tight end on a random team just was very difficult. The other one I had was Foster Moreau on the Saints, with Juwan Johnson being a free
Yeah.
agent, and then like he's had some solid run before. Those are kind of the two I had. Those are pretty deep sleepers compared to like what is really out there, but there's so many bad tight ends in the league. You have any more tight ends on your
Yeah.
list?
That was, I mean, Foster Moreau is another guy I thought of. Pretty much it. But no, I guess Noah Gray's borderline startable right now, but I think this is it for Kelsey. I think this is his final year. I think he's lost a step. I think Noah Gray seems to be a more favorite target. So either Noah Gray gets traded or I think Kelsey retires. I think
Okay.
Kelsey's lost a step. So
With that, that's going to be the end of the show. Thank you all for joining and listening, and I hope you all have a good rest of